Hi, it's Laura with Following the Paper Trail, and I have the third in my monthly birdhouse series. This is the June birdhouse and features a top hat on top of a box, some other kind of masculine kind of details that we'll get to here in just a few minutes. And of course, because with all of the birdhouses, they have mini albums inside. Go ahead and lift the box off or take the hats off, and inside there is a ring bound mini album. It's a flip style of mini album. Has some tags inside, flips up, has another flap here, so very interactive with tags inside. And we will be getting to this one here in just a few minutes. But I do want to show you how to go ahead and get the hat made as well as the box. And we're going to start out with the box that creates the base for the birdhouse. You're going to start out with your square chipboard squares. Now all of the dimensions and everything are given in the pattern, which is available on my website, and the information on how to get to my website and my blog are just below the viewing screen that you're watching right now. Now these squares are going to form essentially a cube. The seams are going to be attached on the inside, so all of your seams or your joints are going to be abutting seams. There's no gap going to be necessary because we're going to be applying construction strips here to the inside of all the joints. So you don't have to worry about how wide the gap needs to be, that sort of thing. You're just going to put your two pieces of chipboard up to each other, take your 1-inch construction strips, which are cut out of a matching cardstock. They're cut to 1 inch and then they're scored down the length, and then you cut them to the length and trim corners as needed to reduce some of the bulk. Now I went ahead and put the ones around the bottom to start with, and then I can go ahead and do the ones along the side. I go ahead and trim the angles before we even start. This can be done with glue or it can be done with adhesive tape, whichever is your preference. And I cut these all a little bit long, it looks like, so I'm going to have to trim those off. I'm going to do that before I attach these last ones. So, and you're going to do this to all 4 of the sides. And so when you apply them, you're just going to attach them so that the fold of your construction strip attaches and lines up with the edge of your chipboard. As I said, go around and do this on all 4 sides, and you're essentially going to create an open topped box when this is all done. Now the mini album that fits inside sits down in this box, but it also goes up inside the hat itself. Okay, so then I'm ready excuse me, to peel off my backing tape. Now we're going to bring these so that corner is abutted and it's not overlapping in either direction, so those 2 corners are just touching right on each other. Again, bring that up, abut the corners, stick it down. Once we have it all attached, then we'll go ahead and burnish it on with our bone folder. Actually, let's go ahead and peel this one off at the same time, so I don't have to be reaching down inside there trying to get it to peel off. I know this is a little bit harder to see in the black. Okay, so once we have our box all formed, I can go in then and with my bone folder or some other flat-edged tool, go ahead and smooth those down and make sure they're all attached nicely. So then you've created a cube that's without a top. So we do need to make a lid for it. Now your lid pieces are going to be slightly wider than your bottom pieces. and there's going to be an opening inside, so we're going to have 4 pieces, or actually there's 6 pieces all the same size, so 2 and 2, and these will create 2 of the sides, and then these will line up. This is your other 2 sides. Excuse me. And then this is an opening in the top that your mini album slips down inside of. And so we're going to attach, oops, I don't even remember why there's some extra pieces that we don't have on here. So we have pieces that are going to help attach our top to our sides. Into our next one. Again, always lining up your fold of your construction strip with the edge of the chipboard. So we're going to peel the paper backing off of these. And then I'm going to align the end of this with the joint of these guys. I've already attached these 2 pieces together. So that lines up nicely. I'll repeat it for this one down here at the other end. And of course it goes flying onto the floor. Why does it always do that? Oh, it's in reach. Good. I don't have to go crawling under my desk. Oops, I have this one on upside down. I love these spatulas. They're great for pulling stuff off, so I can just flip that around, stick it down to the inside like I want it to be. Especially if the adhesive hasn't been on there very long, it peels right off. Once it's sat for up to, like 12 to 24 hours, it's really kind of settled in, and that's where it wants to stay, so it's not quite as easy to peel up. But when it's still fresh like that, that 5-second rule, there's kind of like a 5-minute rule, I think, when it comes to adhesive. In the first 5 minutes, you can usually get it to peel up pretty easily, at least with this aggressive stuff like score tape. Okay, so we've got the sides. These 2 pieces here are our top, and these are our 4 sides. So I've already got the tabs attached for those to create the corners. So bring those tabs up. Real simple. It's just a lid with an open top. And so then that's going to be our lid that sits on top of our box. Let me go ahead and discuss a little bit more then in terms of some of the embellishments that you're going to want to do to your box. After you've got the box made, then you can add pattern paper, and I like it to have that little bit of framework around it. These seams are exposed. If you're doing this out of gray chipboard, you may want to go ahead and paint it if you can't find black chipboard. Excuse me. So I'm going to cut my pattern paper squares about 1/4 of an inch total dimension, vertically and horizontally, as the sides of my box, so it creates that little framework. If you want to punch the corners, you can go ahead and do that, but you'll apply the paper to all 4 sides. If you want to apply it to the bottom as well, feel free, but you're going to apply it to all 4 sides. Now on the box lid itself, you're going to take a 3/4 inch strip, or 2 strips, because one strip won't make it all the way around, and you're going to wrap it. I like to wrap around the corners. On this, it's going to just give it a nice finished look, but it still has the framework at the top and the bottom. You don't need to put anything on the top, because that's going to be covered over by our hat. So speaking of our hat, here, then you can see how there's going to be an opening in the hat, and you can see how these 2 sides allows an opening for our mini album to go up inside. You can also add a mustache. Mustaches are so popular right now, so you can add a mustache if you choose to the front right underneath where the birdhouse is going to be. So let me show you a nifty way to make arcs to cut large scale curves like we need for our hat. For the hat itself, you will need a 12 by 12 piece of paper, and out of that 12 by 12 piece of paper you'll be able to get the body of your hat as well as the brim of the hat. Now the top of the hat can be made out of cardstock that coordinates, which is what I use, or it can be out of another sheet of the same pattern paper or a different pattern paper depending on how you want your hat to be. Excuse me. To make that, you will also need the two templates, which are, these are my originals. They look a little bit nicer for the pattern. But the two templates that you need, one for the brim and one for the top of the hat, both of those are in the pattern. But to start with, we're going to make a large arc that is going to form the body here of our top hat. And this has got the sloped edges. It's not a stovepipe, which is a straight up and down. This is more what I like to call the Mad Hatter style of top hat. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a 1/2 inch by 12 inch piece of chipboard, just a scrap piece of chipboard, and then you're going to punch at each end 1/4 inch in, centered in that 1/2 inch. You're going to pierce with your paper piercing tool. You're going to pierce a hole at each end. Okay, and you want to make sure that your piercer can go through. Now I excuse me, I pierced from the underneath side to the top, because when you pierce, many times it makes that bump, and I want that bump to be on the top so it doesn't interfere. I'm also going to be punching or piercing for the height of my hat. It gives the dimension in the pattern, but you're going to be piercing another hole, the dimension in the pattern. Okay, so then you're going to take your strip, you're going to line it up with the corners and the bottom edge. I'm going to slide this. Actually, I'm going to move this out of the way so I don't have to fall off the edge of it. So I'm going to place my strip, let me move this up a little bit so y'all can see it a little bit better, this strip along the bottom edge. Excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat. Okay, so then I'm going to take my paper piercer and I'm going to stick it down in the hole, kind of stab it on the left hand side. I'm going to hold it with my left hand. If you're a righty, this works. If you're a lefty, you can do it the opposite. Okay, I also want to make sure that my hole, and I have this upside down and it's creating a bump, just like I said. So I'm going to flip it over. I want to make sure my dimension that I give you in the pattern is over here on the right side. Okay, so I'm going to take my pencil. Now I like mechanical pencils because they always stay nice and sharp, but if you're using a standard pencil, you may want to go ahead and sharpen it to a nice point because you need to push it down inside that hole. So I'm going to go down inside that hole, kind of back up to the edge, and then keeping this tight and stabbed in, I'm going to swing an arch. Keeping your pencil as vertical as you can. I'm going to come back over it again. I'm just going to swing that arc. You can see it slightly on camera as it makes a perfect arc. It's kind of a cheap type of compass to draw this for this awfully large circle. Okay, so I'm going to put it in my hole, my intermediate hole. Again, kind of back up to the edge. And I'm going to swing the arc. Again, keeping my pencil nice and vertical. Come back again so that I can see where my arc is. This one you can see a little bit better on camera. So now I can lift this off, set this aside in case you're going to make more hats this same size. So then I can cut it on my pencil line with my scissors if you're more comfortable with your craft knife. go ahead and cut it with your craft knife. You're just going to cut this arch across, and it goes from one edge to one edge, so it's going to be a 90-degree arc. So you can go ahead and set that aside, and now we're going to cut the inside as well. I'm going to cut right on the pencil line. But I've been racking my brain, how are we ever going to be able to get people to cut this arc when I have only an 8.5 by 11 format for the pattern? So it was like, oh, wait a minute. That'll work. So you're going to keep this because we're going to use this to cut our brim out of. But there is the arc that we're going to be using for our hat. Now I've allowed a 1/4 of an inch overlap in it for sizing. So I'm going to take my 1/4 inch score tape and run it right at the edge of one side. So then I can take this piece and wrap it in overlap right at that 1/4 inch. And see how that makes our Mad Hatter style hat? Bring this around. Line it up with that edge of the score tape because it's right at that 1/4 inch. Otherwise, you may want to mark it at that 1/4 inch. Alright, so there's our hat. Now it's round. We're going to turn it to where it's going to be a little bit oval when we put this thing together. Okay, so next step, let me get this back up so you don't have to look at my grungy gray. Alright, so this piece that we cut out, our brim fits on there perfectly. So go ahead and cut your template out as you see that I have it here. Move it around to however you want it specifically to be. And then you're going to trace around the outside circle of the template. Now I keep this in a paper and don't print it onto cardstock because you'll see in a minute. So you got to kind of be a little bit gentle pressing up against it as a template with it being just out of printer paper. Go ahead and trim that. Now I don't want to move this just yet, but what I want to do is be able to mark this fold line. And there's kind of a couple ways. You can use a harder type of bone folder. I use a Teflon bone folder, and this is going to be a little bit too soft to actually mark our paper. I use the one from my Martha Stewart scoreboard, and that works really well, so you can mark it. But another thing you can use is a ballpoint pen. It has a nice top, stiff point on it, and once you go around, you can see where you've drawn. So you want to mark right on that line, and this is our fold line. This is the line of where, our little tabs that are attaching the brim to the hat are going to be snipped to. So, see if I can catch it in the light just right. So you can see this line right here. Here's my pencil line, and there's the line I mark with my pen. It's not physically marked in there, it's just impressed in there. So it's the paper's just dented there. But on the drawn pencil lines, I'm going to go ahead and cut my brim out. If you don't think your cutting is nice enough along the edge, you can always distress the edge a little with a distressing tool, and then nobody will know. And it just looks like it's a little bit tattered of a top hat. Okay, so I can go ahead and get rid of that. And I can stab in, and again, cut on the pencil line, not that fold line. Go ahead and cut this out. Again, if you're more comfortable with craft knife than the scissors of cutting a nice clean line, by all means, go ahead and do that. So after we get this cut out, in this center section, we are going to snip it to that fold edge. Now one thing is we're going to be kind of curling this edge, and this is not going to be on camera, but it's easier to do this before you do all the snips. And I'm just, unfortunately that can't be on camera, I just kind of rub it along the edge of my table, And I'm just kind of coaxing it into a gentle, see, it's just a gentle curve, not a lot. You can roll it around something. See my glue bottle. And you just want to get that little bit of gentle curve going. It's like a cowboy just getting his hat to fit just right. So just not a lot of curve, just a little bit. Okay, so then here on this inside, where that fold line is, we're going to snip quite often, like every 3/8 of an inch, a little bit larger than a 1/4 inch. You're going to snip it almost to that line, really close to it, almost touching it, but not quite. And you're just going to do snips all the way around. Now these don't have to be notches because these are going to fold up and into the hat, so they don't need to be notched out. When we do the top of the hat, we'll be needing to make notches. So, and I already did those, so you don't have to sit there and watch me make 500 notches. So we're just going to go all the way around this entire inside. As I said, going right to that, but not over it. Better to be a little short and come back and snip it some more. And then I'm going to take, I'm just going to use my mouse pad, and it's a dense foam. I'm going to set that down on top of there, and again, using my bone folder rather than pen this time, and I'm going to run right on the edge, right on that line that I created with my pen. And this is just kind of, I'm scoring it to make it so it folds a little easier, but you want to be just on or outside of that line that you've already created. And by doing it here on the dense foam, it kind of scores it in there a little bit better. And if it's not quite on the line or outside of it, go back over it and get it to where it's just right. So pretty easy. All right, so that kind of, see how it already is starting to fold inside. And so then I can take all these little tabs and fold them up. Kind of run your finger along the base of them. Just kind of make sure they're in a kind of a smooth fold. Don't fold them all the way over so they're flat on the brim, because we're going to kind of tuck them back in after you've done that a little bit so it goes down inside of our hat. Now I kind of like to use this back seam as kind of my center back. I eyeball it slightly, and as you can see, if you kind of just oval it up, it just fits right over those guys. So we need to attach either some tape or some glue inside of here, just inside that brim. Probably should have done that if I were using the tape like I am before I made it into a cone shape, but you know, let's see if we can make it a little bit harder by doing it this way. It's going to be inside. Doesn't have to be pretty. If the tape has a few tucks in it, it's not going to be a big deal. So I'll show this to you as soon as I get this tape on there. But the tape just attaches right inside. Also, you can use glue. The only problem with the glue is you got to keep hanging on and going around and sticking the little tabs down. So you can always go back and add glue and not just use just the adhesive. But the adhesive, for speed's sake, makes it a little bit easier. So see how I've attached some tape. It's not perfect along the edges. It's got a few tuck things in it, but it's going to make it a little bit faster to apply those. So we want those all standing up. And then I can peel the paper backing off of my tape if I can find the end. Why is it that the ends of tape always like to hide? Alright, so I peeled the paper backing off. I'm going to put this at my approximate eyeballed center back. Lay it down over all those guys, making sure they're all inside. And then you can start maybe at the back here. And it kind of looks like it's kind of centered. Maybe do one at the front, a couple on the side. Because if your cutting wasn't exact, you know, you're going to have to kind of wiggle it in there a little bit. So just kind of stick those guys all down. Work your way around. sticking them all down. Make sure they're all stuck down. Slick as a whistle. So we got our brim on. Maybe give it a few more. Now that it's got the hat on there, we can curl it up just a little bit more. Okay, so now we have a topless top hat. So that gives us our brim on there. If you want to, maybe in the front, curl that down a little bit, you can do that. And in the back a little bit too. Don't get over exuberant, don't fold the paper. Okay, so there we've got our brim on. See, all those guys are attached right down. Should fit in there just perfectly like it did for me. Some of them might stick up a little. You might need to give them a little extra pressing. And then if you wish, you can always add some glue onto it as well. Now for our top piece, we're going to do this the exact same way. It just doesn't have a hole in the center. So you're going to cut it out on the cut line, and you're going to score it with either a hard type of bone folder like the one in your Martha Stewart pad, or with a ballpoint pen. Now don't use a felt tip pen, it's not going to press down. It needs to be a ball tip pen. And so you're going to go ahead and draw that in, and then you're going to snip out along these edges. As you see I did on this one, I'm going to snip from the outside to that score line that we put on there. See, you can see the score line up here. And now these are little wedges because these are going to fold down, so we need to have that excess. If anybody's ever sewn before, you got to cut these little wedges out to take the excess away. Now we're going to do the exact same thing as we did on the brim, is lay this down, and very carefully, there's no race involved, very carefully, again, with our bone folder. If you want to do it with your pen, it's going to be on the inside, so it's not really going to show, but I would be afraid of pushing through. So go slowly and just trace right on that score line, and that's just helping it to fold right on that score line. As you can see, it's already folding up along this side versus this side. So work your way around the entire circumference. Hope I have my geometry right. That is circumference. It's late. So I worked my way around. So now I can just gently kind of fold those down all the way around. And we're going to do the same sort of thing. Get this out of the way. Same sort of thing with our tabs on. And your finger around the side. Make sure there's no really sharp ones that you can kind of bend those down in. So this is going, now you want to see, so you can look down in and see the oval. It's longer than this one and wider. So if you want to kind of give it a little squishy do without folding anything, give it a more oval shape. And you want to make sure you're close to be, if it's not perfect, it's not going to be the end of the world. And this is going, there's no tape in there yet, so, but this is just going to set down in the top. Whoops, can't lift it up at the same time. So I'm going to put some, again, the tape here on the inside. You could also use glue, but for speed's sake, this aggressive, now you're not going to want to just use like an ATG or something like that. You want it to be a good strong adhesive, like a score tape, magic tape, wonder tape, red tape, you know, all those, the ones that are the really skookum stick type of tapes, or also a glue. A glue, you're just going to have to make sure each of those tabs is holding down. I personally don't recommend hot glue because it does release. It dries out and releases after a pretty short time, you know, like a year or two. So I tend to prefer adhesives or glues versus the hot glue. But it's your project, so if that's what you choose, by all means, go right ahead. Okay, so again, I didn't pay attention to where I started. Where did it go? Why does it hide? Honestly, really? Oh, there it is. So I'm going to do the same sort of thing. Get it to peel off. Take the tape backing off. Again, set it to where it's like, okay, so that's kind of on the center line. Okay, let's see, this is kind of in the center. Maybe lift it up and kind of put that, stuck that down a little bit. So take your time with this. There's no race. Just make sure they like to sneak out, so kind of like teenagers. So you just get it slipped inside all the way around, and then you can start reaching inside and sticking those tabs down. Working our way around, getting those stuck down. So you've pressed them down, they're real easy to peel back up if they're not stuck down yet. Work your way around, but I do recommend you sticking one down at each end, so it kind of make sure you're nice, and gives it a better opportunity to be evenly distributed. So I'm just working my way around, getting them stuck to start with, and then I'll really press them down after I get them in place. Perfect. So then if I want to run around with my bone folder in there, really pressing them down so they're nice. And if you've cut it right, dimensionally, it should fit on there perfectly. So you want to make sure when you're cutting out your template that you do so carefully. That should be right. If you print it to scale, don't have it change the scale, have it just directly. But see, there's our top into our top hat and our top hat. So then after you do that, I've taken some binding type of trim. This is a cotton trim, and I've just kind of distressed it with a little bit of ink, a couple of colors of ink to distress it, make it look a little grungy, and then just tied a bow, added some flowers. This is done with Prima engraver paper, and these are also some of the metal flowers that are part of Prima's collection. Here I've added, you can add a hole, quote unquote, because it is a birdhouse for the bird, so you can make it a layered with just circles. But I've went ahead and used the Tim Holtz Alterations pocket watch to make the hole, but you can do it either way. You could also very easily make a pocket watch if you don't have this die. Just cut the double circle and then just cut a smaller double circle, and it would still look like excuse me, a pocket watch. So in order to attach your top hat, you're going to add some adhesive down each side of your lid, and you will then attach your hat to your lid like so. Make it, relatively centered. You can see it better on the bottom, how it centers on the bottom, and that's how you'll then attach your top hat to the lid of your box. And there essentially is the birdhouse is ready. But I do want to show you, I think we could still do it all here on one video. I do want to show you how to make the mini album that fits inside. This just has a ring binding, which is probably binding to where each of the pages has a hole in it, is probably one of the most common methods of binding a mini album or mixed media type book journal. It's easy to do. You can use metal rings that you can get in an office supply store. These are split metal rings that just split open, so you can add to them. You can also use, in this same sort of thing, you can put a ribbon that threads through there and then ties. You can use wire ties. You also can get those at the hardware store, the kind that you can bundle wires together, put those through there. You can use cables. You can also put solid things. A pin binding is very similar as well, probably, as I said, the most common method of binding, at least that we're using in the mini album arena right now, is using some sort of binding through holes method. Now this album is going to be a flip album, so when it flips open, this is right side up, but the back side of the page you want to pay attention to because it's going to be upside down, so you want to apply everything in the same fashion. Now these pages open up on one side for the front. It's got a tag, so we've created a little sleeve here that the tag just slips back behind. If you have problems with they're heavy and they want to slip out, this is also not attached all the way, so it could slip underneath both the top and the bottom and stay. Now when it flips up this way, this also has a flap. I've created it with spots for 2 additional pictures. This could be all one piece if you wanted it to be, again, a tag, excuse me, that I've then added, and it can, again, tuck. These haven't been tucked under there, so it's a little tight. Be tucked under there, because when this hangs this way, you don't want your tags falling out. But I've added some embellishments as well. And it all flips. Now the paper I'm using here is the Prima Sunrise Sunset paper. Again, I've gone through this whole thing and it's all done the same. Each of the pages is essentially done the same way. And then this flips and flips, flip. I don't have the tags in all of the pages yet. And then it has a chipboard cover on it. Now to make these pages, you're going to have a rectangle that you're going to divide into 3 equal sections. So we're scoring this into 3 equal sections, and we're folding it in an accordion fold. So you can see here, that's the flap for the front, and then when it flips over, there's the flap on the back. So it's essentially a Z shape. To get the binding tab on the top and to create the pocket along the bottom, you're going to be cutting out pieces of a contrasting cardstock. So this one has a 1-inch section and a 1.5-inch section. This will be on the top. The part that it tucks under, the 1.5, is the pocket. Now to have the binding tab, this is essentially the same thing. Here's the 1-inch and the 1.5 like this one did, but it has 2 1/2-inch sections in between, and these are going to fold, and these 2 are going to attach together. So it's still the 1 and the 1.5, just like this one is. However, it's got this tab in here that we can punch our holes into to put our rings through in order to bind it. So I've already got the tape inside of here. So you're going to just put it down one side and attach those together. So it's got 2 wings and the tab. Now the tab is going to attach to the top of our page. So the page opens like a standard book. So this will attach to the center section. Now, because on this side, this is, I want this at the top of my page, so the one with the tab, with this narrower section, it's going on the top of the page of the front. With this piece, it's going to attach to the bottom, and you're going to snug the fold right up, and it's going to have the wider section. So your wider section will be at the bottom, your narrower section is at the top. Now I want to use either glue or tape. My score tape happens to be just sitting right here, if I can find the end. Now I do want to put my tape very close to the fold. Not over it, but close to it. And I want to have it to where it's centered, because I've cut these slightly narrower than my actual section of my page, to fold that up. So that's going to create pockets. It doesn't have to have the side attached down, because those are just going to slip down inside. Same thing over here. If you want to apply the tape to the top of your page instead, you can do that as well. So we're going to apply that, stick that down, make sure it's centered, bring it down to where that fold is right at the edge, and fold it down. So then that gives us a little spot at the top and the bottom to be slipping our tag under. Add your pattern paper mats here and here, as well as your tag. So then that flaps on the front. Then when you're going to flip it, because remember it's a flip book, so our tab here is going to be at the bottom. We're going to open it up, and we're going to do the same thing on this back side, is go ahead and attach that right close to the edge to give us that maximum, being able to stick that tag up underneath there to hold it in place. Here as well. Again, you can apply it to the binding sections, pocket sections, or you can apply it right to the page piece and then stick that down. So that way the pocket on the flip, here's my binding tab, but the pocket is on the bottom and the hold down tab is up at the top. Flap flips down. So in our mini album, as you saw in here, this flaps. Here's our binding tab at the top, our wider pocket at the bottom. I've added pattern paper. This is a directional, so you want to make sure if you have a directional paper that you're applying those right. Now, I did a ticket corner on all of my pieces. You can punch it if you choose to. Then on the flip side, again, I put my journaling spot down at the bottom, spot for my photo. And again, paying attention when I have dimensional, that I have it so my numbers aren't upside down. So you go through, same thing on each page, flips, and this flaps over. So it's still, see, it's still that Z shape. So essentially there's our page. It's just folded in so you have 3 times the surface area to be putting photos and such down. So you're then also going, and I left this one blank for specifically to show you, you're going to go ahead and cut your chipboard for your front and back covers. Now I ran this to the edge, but I also left some black sections. If you're using plain gray chipboard, if you want, if it's going to be showing and it's going to bother you that it's gray, you may want to either paint that or ink it, stain it, something, or just cover it edge to edge. You could also do, your paper could wrap around the edges if you prefer. I've added a few more of the metal flowers as well as some of the little roses inside, and then made some little tags as well as having a little bit of accent paper down here at the bottom. Ironically, it was black chipboard and I covered it in craft paper here on the inside. Made a little spot for journaling. So then when you go to put it into the box, it'll just set down inside, and our hat will go down over the top. This will fit down snug. You can also add some other embellishments. For instance, you need a perch, since it's a birdhouse, you need a perch, so you can add a long screw. Now the screws that I used in the kits are actually kind of a verdigris greenish color. They're yummalicious, and so they'll fit right in, kind of a little bit more interesting than the plain silver screws. I've also taken in some 1/2 inch, 5/8, 3/4 inch nuts, nuts and bolts. Added nuts to the 4 corners as feet on our box. But you can totally make this completely steampunk if you wanted to. I'm going to do a steampunk version of it. You could do it really masculine. You could also totally make this really girly. I also want to do this one for Christmas time. Make this a snowman hat. You could make it a snowman mini album. Inside, maybe have a carrot for the perch instead of the mustache and the long screw. I think there's just all sorts of ideas pertaining to the top hat. Doesn't have to be masculine the way this one is. You can make it, like I said, Christmas steampunk. You can even make it girly with some marabou feathers and stuff like that. I think the possibilities are just totally a bunch of fun, and then it's just always fun to be able to have the mini album inside as well for those fun memories. So anyway, there's the June birdhouse pattern. As I said, is available over on my website. I do still have a few of these kits available also on my website. The new series is coming up here in just a couple weeks with July, August, and September We're going to keep on going until we have a full year. Plus I'll be supplementing also some additional specialty birdhouses as well, 1 or 2 each quarter. So there is our June Birds Off. Hats off to you. So I hope you've enjoyed this third in the series, and I look forward to bringing you next month in July. So thanks a bunch.